Hello, all you beautiful people out there. I hope you're fine and dandy. Welcome to Monday. In this little session, we're going to talk about the sea. And also, I'm going to give you some practical tips on how to manage your state. I'll see you in the next bit. So what I've been aware of is that lately lots of things that I'm seeing affect me in very important ways. If I see something really good about what people are doing, and then I feel really good. And then if I see something awful, then I feel really awful. I've tried to be more discerning, so I look at the thing that, and I think to myself, does this look like it's going to make me feel better, or is it going to make me feel worse? And I really avoid watching things that are going to make me feel worse, because there's tons of bad stuff out there if you want it. And remember that a lot of the bad stuff that's out there is out there because they are putting it out there as a way of giving us fear porn. Remember, they've got to keep us in fear. When we're in fear, we can't create. Okay, so don't think that everything that you see that's negative is all true. It's out there because it needs to be out there to nudge and to spread fear porn. But I thought, well, I'll ask the people who know better than me about this, what's going on. And what they said to me was that, look, the reason is because you've got too much, you're too attached to the outcome, right? And it made me think of the work that Anthony DeMello has done on attachments, and about as soon as you get attached to something, then you are the slave to it. You are the prisoner of it. And therefore, when it's good, you're great, and when it's bad, you're not. It's like being attached to the opinion of others. And I used to be attached to the opinion of others when I was younger. And so people could make me feel good, or they could make me feel bad just by their opinion. Then I discovered that their opinion isn't worth shit. And that helped a lot. Now I don't care about the opinion of people. However, we have attachments everywhere we look. They said that I was attached to the outcome too much. And they said that's because I was looking at it on a very micro level, very close-up level. And they said what you have to do is you have to look more at the big picture. And they said you have to trust that there is a plan and it's being taken through its course. And they said the plan is always moving forward. It's always moving forward. However, if you focus on the bad stuff, it might seem like it isn't. And if you only focus on the good stuff only, then you're not getting the proper balance. But what they're saying is perhaps it's better to actually come away from that and focus on the bigger plan. The big plan of, look, we are moving toward a new age. We are moving toward, and if you don't like the new age thing, because that was it, that was also infiltrated, and they messed that one up as well, didn't they? We're moving toward paradise. Okay, mankind's golden age. That's what we're moving toward, and that's kind of where our focus has to be in our kind of understanding of where we're going. We're going to the golden age. Look, and it's a bumpy road. But then they give me this brilliant. What I've noticed of late, as I'm starting to kind of get very comfortable with this process of communicating, and then with me, that they just keep giving me imagery and metaphor, that imagery and metaphor, and it kind of explains everything much better than the words sometimes that they use. And so they said, they reminded me when I was a child, and I used to go down to the beach. We lived right on the beach, the seafront, and I would go to the beach. And in the northeast of England, the tides are very, very strong, the tide going out and tide coming in. But when the tide was really in, and the waves were giving it big welly, if you stood there and tried to see the tide going out, you would never see it. It was so gradual that you wouldn't know it was happening. And so you could just stand and watch the waves crashing and think, oh my goodness, the waves, here's another wave crashing. The only way that you actually are able to perceive the tide going out and the waves receding is by doing something else. And they said to me, picking up shells or stones, pretty stones from the beach. And we used to do that. We would be like going along the beach and looking for, sometimes we'd look for sea coal or nice stones or whatever, or crabs. And so once you became focused on that, looking for the nice things, entertaining yourself, suddenly when you looked up, the sea would be way out, the tide would be moved out. And so what they were saying was, that's what they were talking about. Looking too closely, you don't perceive anything. You don't perceive any change. But when you actually get involved with doing other things, then when you look back, suddenly the tide has gone out. It's gone out, way out. Okay? And that's what I've got to learn to do, is to be able to not try and live and breathe every moment of what's happening, but really focus on the fact, I know the tide's going out. We know the tide's going out. So why should we bother looking at it and checking? It's going to go out. What we have to do is to work on something else. And I'll give you a little story that came to mind. There was a man walking along the beach one day, and the tide had gone out, and it had left thousands upon thousands of starfish stranded on the beach, and the sun was hot, and so the starfish were starting to dry up, and basically they were all going to die. But what had happened for all the starfish to be left on the beach, we don't know. So the man was just walking along the beach, and he saw another guy who was walking along picking up starfish, and he was throwing the starfish back into the sea. He was throwing them back into the sea. And as he came closer, the guy said to him, what are you up to? He said, I'm just throwing these starfish back into the sea. He said, but look, he said, there are hundreds of thousands of them. He said, you're not going to make any difference. And the guy picked one up and he threw the starfish in the sea. He said, I made a difference to that one. And I think that's where our focus needs to be. That we can't save every starfish that's stranded at the moment. The tide's going out. The tide is going out. But we can work on saving, even if it's one, even if it's our partner, even if it's our best friend, even if it's our parent, our brother. Okay? And remember that very often you could throw one back in and it would come back out again. Okay? For whatever reason. So that's our job. Our job is to go and pick some shells, make a nice shell necklace, save a few starfish on the way, and occupy ourselves in positive things while the tide goes out, because the tide's going out. Okay? Right. So that was from little metaphor from the emissaries, which is very nice. And now I'm going to share something with you. The other day, thanks to something I saw, I was feeling really, really agitated. I was feeling agitated. I didn't feel right. I was out of balance. I felt uncomfortable and worried and all of those things. Okay? Now, I put up with it for a bit. And then, because I'm a therapist, I said to myself, Gordon, sort yourself out. There's no point in spending the whole day feeling this way. So what did I do? Well, I took myself off to a quiet place, and this is my suggestion for you. I took myself up to a quiet place and I asked myself, Gordon, what is the problem? What's going on? What are you worried about? Right, and you can fill in the blank. What are you worried about? What are you frightened about? What are you nervous about? What are you anxious about? What are you depressed about? It doesn't matter. Fill in the gap. And then you wait. Now, this is where you've got to box clever. This is where you've got to be very, very careful. It isn't careful, you've got to be very aware. When you ask a question of yourself, you will get an answer. Now, very often what happens is the answer comes in a little flash. It might be a little image, it might be a little memory, it might be a little word, it might be a little sound, okay? But they give you the answer. Now, when I asked that question, I immediately was given 3 things that had been on my mind. Okay, 3 things that I had to do that had been on my mind. And I wanted to dismiss them. And this is what I mean by we've got to be careful. Because they seem so obvious. Sometimes you think, it can't be that. Because that's just obvious. You know, we want something more profound and whatever. And often it's not. And it's often the thing that you get is what you've been thinking about all the time anyway, when you realize it. So what you do is you trust that this is your unconscious mind. It whispers to you. It doesn't shout. The unconscious mind doesn't shout. Our conscious mind shouts and overwhelms everything. Can't be that. Won't be that. No, it'll be something else. It won't be that. Why would it be that? Okay? That's the part that what you say is when your conscious mind's shouting, you say to it, can you just shut the fuck up, please? All right? And you send it away. So if you don't get it the first time, ask again. What's the problem? What are you anxious about? Remember, anxious, future. Depressed, past. That's it. Depressed and angry, past. Anxious, future. So you know, if you get the feel of, is it something I'm worried about for the future or something I'm angry, depressed about the past? Okay? Once you understand what it is, and I was given 3 things and I went, oh, okay. All it was, I was being overwhelmed by things. All right? And it taken me back to when I used to work in that kind of environment where I was overwhelmed. As soon as you know what it is, then you can do 2 things. Nice and easy. All right? So what you do is this. The first one is you start havening. Right? Havening is just putting your hands on your shoulders like this, across like Tutankhamun, and you go down nice and firmly, like you love yourself, to the elbow, come off, and do that. Yeah. So all you do is then you start saying this. I'll give you an example. For example, my job was to take the car to the garage, and it was a different garage I'd never been to. And here in Spain, obviously, I was going to have to speak Spanish, and it was going to have to be technical. And I was getting anxious about it, thinking, well, I hope I can explain myself, right? So that's what came to my mind. And so I said, okay, so look, it's okay, right? So this is all I'm doing. And I'm talking to myself. It's okay. It's okay. You can speak Spanish really well. You can explain yourself. And if you can't, you can always find a way around it. It'll be okay. In fact, it might even be fun. And that's all I'm doing. All right. Now, if you do that for 8 minutes, I guarantee you that you will not feel that feeling. It'll be gone. But what you're doing at the same time is you're talking to yourself as though it wasn't you. You're talking to yourself like you would talk to a child. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's going to be all right. I'll be there with you. It'll be okay. We'll get through this. And then you'll get to the other side and you'll look back and you'll say, well, it wasn't anything. That was okay. That was easy. Can you hear what I'm doing? I'm just reassuring myself at the same time as I'm havening. This is absolutely very powerful. Don't underestimate it. Don't poo-poo this, okay? It is incredibly powerful. Why would you want to spend your time feeling anxious and feeling depressed and angry when you can just do this? And you can get rid of it and you feel absolutely like neutral and back on form again. Right? So that's one option. Now, if you fancy, what you can then do, you can do maybe a couple of minutes or 3 minutes of that, and then you can start doing some EFT. I promise you, if you do these 2 things, you will not have any problems after that. You will feel great. And how do I know that? Because I've done it loads of times to people, and I've done it to myself oodles of times. And you know what? Just sometimes I forget. Or life carries on, and you get carried away with things, and you don't have time to do it. But look, we've got plenty of time these days, haven't we? So, EFT, all you do, karate chop, you start hitting your karate chop, and you say, look, even though I'm stressed about this, going to this garage, I'm okay. Even though I'm getting nervous about it, I like who I am. Even though I'm getting nervous about going to the garage, whatever, fill in the gap, I'm a good person, right? And then you take your 2 fingers and you just start tapping on your EFT points. Don't worry about the order, it doesn't matter. Top of the head, crown of the head, in between the eyes, side of the eye, under the nose, under the chin, on your collarbone, the knobbly bits at the bottom. Can you hear? Bop, 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 bop. And then bang your wrists together. All right. There are lots of other points as well, but they're the ones that I like. Okay. And you just go around, and this is what you do. You go, hey, I'm nervous. I'm anxious. I'm anxious. I'm anxious. I'm anxious. But it's going to be all right. I know I'm anxious, but it's going to be all right. I feel anxious, but it's going to be all right. Okay? And that's all you do. That's all you do. All right? And you do that round and round, 3, 4, 5 times, and stop, take a nice deep breath and check in. And what you find is that you'll be in a much better place. And when you talk to yourself, this is very important, talk to yourself, give yourself advice, like you would give your best friend advice. Okay? It's a loop that you create, and you give yourself advice, because unfortunately we tend to really talk to ourselves very badly. Oh, this is going to be terrible. This is going to be terrible. I'm going to hate this. Oh, I'm so nervous. I feel so bad. Right? When you're doing this, you're havening or you're tapping, and you're saying, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You know what you have to do. You can do it. You've done it before. Just like we would with anybody else. All right? And you will get yourself into a better place. And it doesn't matter whether it's something you've got to do or something you've seen. And the last little bit of advice is this. There's a thing called the reframe. Reframing is the most powerful thing that we can use to make ourselves better in terms of thought. We use it all of the time. We even have expressions in our language which are reframes, automatic reframes. For example, when we say, well, look at it this way, right? What you're doing, what a reframe is, imagine you've got a frame around something, and this frame is a negative frame, like this is not good. So what you're doing is you're taking that negative frame off and you're putting a positive frame around it. That's all. So for example, somebody says to you, oh my God, I've crashed a car and it's a write-off. And somebody says to you, you're all right? Well, that's good. Well, look at it this way. The insurance is going to allow you to buy a different car. You can get a new car, maybe something that you like even more. Right, suddenly you go, yeah, that's right. Reframe. That is taking what appears to be a negative situation and putting a positive swing on it. Now, how do you do that? Well, all that you have to do is you say, what is the positive outcome that can come from this? What is something positive that can come from this, right? So I don't know if you remember the story of the man whose son came home with a horse that he'd found, wild horse, and he said, it's brilliant, I found a horse, it's worth a fortune, it's incredible, what good luck. And his dad said, maybe yes, maybe no. And then the next day while the son was working with the horse, it threw him off and he broke his leg. Okay, and all of the neighbours went, oh, this is terrible, your son's got a broken leg now, he can't help you in the farm, it's going to be awful, dreadful, bad news. And the man said, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And then the very next day, the king's soldiers came into the village to take away all the young men who they wanted to fight in the war and who everybody knew wouldn't come back. And of course, they didn't take the man's son because he had a broken leg. So, that's reframing everything. That's taking something negative and making it positive. You can do it. And again, you can do it when you're doing this or when you're doing this. You say, look at it this way. So for example, with going to the garage, look at it this way. It's going to be a brilliant opportunity for you to test out your Spanish, to better your Spanish. You might even learn some new words. Look at it this way. It gets you out of the house for a little bit. Look at it this way. You'll see something that you haven't seen before. It's endless. Reframing is endless. You can say as many things about something positive as you like. Somebody dies. Somebody dies. What do? We say, well, they're in a much better place now. It's a reframe, right? That's forget about the negative death. Think about something positive. That's what reframing is. That's what we have to do all of the time. I do it naturally all of the time. We all do. But if you do it on purpose, you can help yourself and help other people to get into a great place. Okay? So I'll leave those with you. Please share them. If you know people who need some help, go round to their house and haven the hell out of them. All right? You sit there and if you know somebody who's suicidal, somebody who's depressed, who's angry, who's anxious, go and haven them. Right? There's nothing else to do. You haven them and you reframe them and you just tell them nice things and you rub their arms down like this. And I tell you what, at the end of it, they will be in a much better place. And so will you for having helped them. All right. Take care. I'll see you on Friday. Have a lovely week. Bye.